Transgender Awareness Week is a call to uplift the trans community and to memorialize those who have been victims of transphobic violence. But this year's observance comes at an especially difficult time. Just hours after Donald Trump won the presidential election, crisis hotlines that serve LGBTQ+ people reported a staggering uptick in calls. The Trevor Project, a nonprofit that supports LGBTQ+ youth, says it registered a nearly 700% increase in calls, texts, and chat messages the day after the election. It's the end result of a years-long campaign by the Republican Party to demonize the LGBTQ+ community, especially trans people. And it's far from over. Here's Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin earlier today.
The Democrats are spending so much time talking about the scrutiny of President Trump's picks, and yet did we spend this amount of time scrutinizing Biden's pick? I mean, we can talk about Rachel, the Assistant Secretary of HHS. I think that's a pretty controversial pick from whatever pronoun he or she decides to use.
To be very clear, Mullin was asked about the qualifications of Trump's cabinet picks. The question had actually nothing to do with pronouns or gender identity. Now, none of this is new from Republicans, but unfortunately, some Democrats seem to be taking the bait and internalizing the GOP talking point that defending trans rights cost them the election. Days after Trump's victory, Democratic Congressman Tom Suozzi of New York told the New York Times, quote, "I don't want to discriminate against anybody, but I don't think biological boys should be playing in women's sports. Democrats aren't saying that, and they should be," end quote. Congressman Seth Moulton of Massachusetts also chimed in, claiming Democrats are, quote, out of touch on the issue. As he told the Times, "I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete. But as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that." Moulton then doubled down on that view during this interview on MSNBC with Alex Witt.
And I stand by my position. You know, maybe I didn't get all the words exactly right, but the point is that the backlash I've received proves my point that we can't even have these discussions as a party.
Now, there are many theories as to why Vice President Harris lost, and everyone has their own prescriptions for what the Democratic Party needs to fix in order to better connect with voters. But throwing a marginalized community under the bus, one that is already under attack by the GOP, doesn't seem like the way to do it. And speaking of seeing and connecting with communities, it's worth noting that 86% of LGBTQ+ voters went to the polls and tried to vote Harris into office. In fact, they are an increasingly loyal constituency for Democrats. There's also the fact that Kamala Harris never made trans issues a cornerstone of her presidential campaign. And yet, Republicans spent nearly $215 million on anti-trans ads, many falsely claiming that trans rights would somehow come at the expense of everyone else's rights. Project 2025 is a 900-plus page playbook for the first 180 days of the new Trump administration. And it is literally riddled with proposals to further marginalize the LGBTQ+ community, including and especially trans persons. That means Democrats will have to answer the call and be champions for the community they have for so long claimed to represent. One Democrat is already doing that, and he's doing it from a deep red state, no less. Following Trump's win, Democratic Governor Andy Beshear of Kentucky responded not by blaming transgender people, but by further touting his support for them. In an op-ed written for the New York Times, Beshear said, quote, "As governor, I have vetoed numerous anti-LGBTQ and anti-choice bills, yet I still beat Mr. Trump's hand-picked candidate last fall," end quote. Hours ago, Beshear spoke with Reverend Al Sharpton on this network, and in that interview, he reiterated his commitment to LGBTQ+ rights.
When I vetoed the nastiest anti-LGBTQ bill we'd ever seen last year in my election year, I talked about it. I said, my faith teaches me that every child is a child of God. So I was going to stand up for those kids.